Welcome, everyone, to what promises to be a riveting exploration of Paolo Sorrentino's masterpiece, The Great Beauty. Today, we journey through the realms of art, music, and storytelling that Sorrentino so masterfully unites.
The Great Beauty, a film that dares to drape itself in the extravagant costumes of Rome, only to reveal the naked truth of emptiness beneath. Sorrentino, much like a magician, distracts with the opulent whilst probing the void.
Indeed, Orson, and it's this dance between the facade and the genuine, much like my own tramp, that reveals the true beauty of it. There's a profound sadness in the laughter, a beauty in the decay. But let us not overlook the craftsmanship. Sorrentino's precision in detail and timing in this narrative weaves snares tighter than any I crafted in Psycho. Rome, in its grand decay, is a character as complex and compelling as any Hitchcock blonde.
Precisely, but where is the revolution? Sorrentino's Rome is a mere stage for the bourgeois ennui. Where is the critique, the radical departure? The Great Beauty is more a lamentation than a call to arms. Cinema should confront, not succumb to nostalgia.
And yet, Jean-Luc, doesn't its very fabric challenge us? The interplay between the surreal and the real in Sorrentino's film compels a deeper examination. Like 2001, it forces us to look beyond the immediate, into what could be, or perhaps what already is.
As Sorrentino weaves through the existential, we are left to ponder the eternal question of what truly constitutes beauty. Is it in the grandiosity of Rome, the solitude of Jep's journey, or somewhere lost between the notes of silence and sound?
The Great Beauty seduces the eye while challenging the soul. Yet one cannot help but question if Sorrentino is the architect of a new cinematic language or merely an imitator, dressing old ideas in modern garb.
It's the human condition, Orson, to seek beauty amidst chaos. Sorrentino simply holds up a mirror to society, one that reflects both the grotesque and the sublime, much like the little tramp's tightrope walk between comedy and tragedy. Yes, and within this reflection, there's an undeniable craft in manipulating the audience's gaze, guiding us through a labyrinth of emotion and thought, much like I did in Vertigo. It's the nuances, the small details, that render the narrative both profound and perplexing.
Yet must we always find solace in the grandiose? Sorrentino's Rome is a gilded cage that entraps us with its beauty, distracting from the fissures in its facade. True beauty lies not in opulence, but in authenticity, in the raw and the real.
In the end, isn't it about the journey Sorrentino takes us on? A journey that, like a clockwork orange, compels us to confront the duality of man, the capacity for both great beauty and profound ugliness.
Indeed, Stanley. In wrestling with Sorrentino's vision, we embark on a quest not just through the eternal city, but through the very essence of beauty, art, and ultimately ourselves. Let us delve deeper into this journey, exploring the layers that compose the Great Beauty. Let's dive into the heart of Sorrentino's masterpiece, starting with its aesthetic roots. Orson, your penchant for innovation finds echo in Sorrentino's work, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Though The Great Beauty dabbles in the grandiosity of modern Rome, I see a lineage tracing back to Italian Neorealism. Yet it's as if Sorrentino took Neorealism and decided to throw a lavish party in its honor. The camera work, the lighting, it's all a tribute, and yet a bold departure.
A departure indeed, Orson. But to call it a tribute, I disagree. Neorealism was about the raw, unfiltered essence of post-war Italy. Sorrentino, on the other hand, is drowning in decadence. Where's the political rage, the social critique? He's lost in the aesthetics, missing the point entirely.
But Jean-Luc, isn't there beauty in exploring the aesthetic itself? Rome, with all its decadence, serves as more than just a backdrop.
Federico, exploring beauty for beauty's sake, is a bourgeois indulgence. Sorrentino might as well be a modern-day Nero, fiddling while Rome burns. The true Rome, the gritty, pulsating heart of the city, is nowhere to be found in his glossy postcard.
You're missing the forest for the trees, Jean-Luc. The film uses its aesthetic excess to mirror the emptiness of Jep's quest. There's critique wrapped in that opulence. It's reflective, almost Shakespearean. All that glisters is not gold. Often have you heard that told.
Shakespeare doesn't save the shallow imitation of depth. What we need is a return to the roots, to the stories of the streets, not the palazzos.
Well, it seems we are at an impasse. The beauty of cinema, like all art, is its ability to polarize, to provoke. Sorrentino has clearly stirred something in both of you, though in markedly different directions. Today's focus is on Rome, a city that breathes life into the great beauty as much as any character. It's a living, pulsating entity that reflects the extravagance and nostalgia of our times.
I see Sorrentino's Rome as a grand stage, reminiscent of the elaborate spectacles I aimed for in Citizen Kane. But there's a decadence, a sort of melancholic opulence that overshadows it. It's not just about the grandeur, it's the emptiness behind it.
Indeed, the meticulous framing of Rome's landscape becomes an integral part of the narrative. The precise composition, each frame carefully calculated to deliver both beauty and a critique on its superficial facade.
Yes, and Sorrentino manages to capture the dichotomy of Rome, its glorious past and the decadent present. It whispers stories of grandeur while revealing the decay and decadence of its current state.
But isn't it all just a bit too nostalgic? Rome in the Great Beauty feels like a museum, a relic of the past rather than a living city. It's an aestheticized version of reality, detached from the socio-political turmoil that engulfs Italy and the world.
Nostalgia, yes, but there's beauty in it. Like the tramp in modern times, finding joy amidst despair. Rome may be portrayed as a relic, but within its streets and ruins, there's a heartbeat, a laughter amidst the sorrow, don't you think?
Ah, but the danger lies in mistaking the map for the territory. Sorrentino shows us a Rome that's larger than life. But what of the real Rome? The city of the common man, the everyday struggles, that's conspicuously absent.
The real issue here is not whether the portrayal is accurate, but whether it serves the narrative. The Rome in the Great Beauty is a character in its own right, crucial to the thematic exploration of beauty, decay, and the search for meaning.
This all sounds terribly morose, and while Rome indeed serves a thematic purpose, where's the suspense? The intrigue? In my films, settings contribute to the plot's tension. Here, Rome is just a backdrop for Jep's existential meandering.
But that's precisely the point, isn't it? Sorrentino isn't Hitchcock. The Great Beauty scrutinizes the existential, the abstract, not the tangible tension of a suspense thriller. Rome aids in this philosophical exploration rather than serving as a mere backdrop for the plot.
It appears Rome, in all its complexity, has sparked quite the discussion. Its portrayal in The Great Beauty mirrors the dichotomy of human existence, the eternal city as both a canvas of historical grandeur and a mirror to the soul's melancholy. Let's dive into the evolution of Italian cinema and where Sorrentino positions himself within this vibrant tapestry. Alfred, your thoughts?
Sorrentino's pacing, it's languid, yet punctuated with moments of acute suspense, reminds me heavily of my work, but Italian cinema, well, it's always been more about the sprawl, hasn't it? The slow burn rather than the sudden shock. I'd say Sorrentino has a foot in both camps. His films, they dance between comedy and tragedy much like mine, but he flirts with melancholy, veers into the operatic. Fellini, Visconti, they laid the tracks. Sorrentino is merely driving a more modern train.
Modern? Hardly. If anything, Sorrentino is harking back, not stepping forward. Italian cinema's evolution appears to be in a loop. The Great Beauty could be a nod to the past, wrapped in the veneer of the present. But where is the innovation?
So you see no evolution through his lens?
Evolution, yes, but it's cyclical. He's dissecting Rome, Italian society, with a scalpel that's been used before. It's sharp, sure, but the incisions feel familiar.
But isn't that somewhat the point? Cinema is a reflection, a critical mirror. Sorrentino captures the essence of Italy's decadent decline, much like we did in our times, questioning, probing. Isn't every generation simply rediscovering the wheel and calling it innovation?
Rediscovery doesn't negate innovation. The method of questioning changes, the tools evolve. Look at the way Sorrentino uses the camera, the music. He's not reinventing Italian cinema. He's amplifying its legacy, honing its edge for a new era.
Well, amplification isn't creation, is it? I admire his blend, but where's the line where homage becomes pastiche? In the suspense, Charlie, that's where Sorrentino carves his niche. Real suspense is knowing when to hold back, not just pile on. There's a meticulousness in his approach, reminiscent of
your work, Alfred? Not everything is about suspense and withholding. Sorrentino's genius lies in excess, in the opulence that defines both his style and his narrative substance.
So we're agreeing that Sorrentino is a maestro of the modern, standing on the shoulders of giants, navigating the fine line between homage and innovation.
Giants, perhaps. But whether he's surfing the wave or being swallowed by it, that's the real question. Sorrentino has skill, but Italian cinema's evolution seems more like a beautifully shot déjà vu.
A beautifully shot déjà vu still makes for compelling viewing, Orson. Maybe we're too caught up in defining innovation, failing to appreciate the beauty of iteration.
Exactly, Jean-Luc. In the end, isn't it about the story, the emotion? Whether we're moved, provoked, entertained? Sorrentino does that, by any means necessary.
Compelling points all around. Sorrentino indeed straddles a complex lineage, drawing from the wellsprings of Italian cinema's past to script its future, whether through homage, innovation, or a bit of both. Let's discuss the music and sound design in The Great Beauty. In my view, Sorrentino has orchestrated a symphony that transcends mere background, crafting an auditory landscape that is as vital as the streets of Rome themselves. Thoughts?
Indeed, the sound design in The Great Beauty isn't just an accompaniment, it's a narrative force. It reminds me of how I used music in A Clockwork Orange to provoke, unsettle, and sometimes mislead the audience. Sorrentino has taken this approach further, creating an emotional resonance that elevates the film's visual splendor.
The music, oh, it's the soul of the film. It dances between scenes, lifting the spirit, then plunging into sorrow. It's like the silent films where music wasn't just background, it told the story. It's expressive, innovative. Sorrentino understands that, the power of music to express what words cannot.
But let's not gloss over the fact that sometimes the music and sound serve as a crutch for scenes that might otherwise falter under their own weight. In The Great Beauty, there are moments where the music seems to compensate for what the narrative lacks, much like the bombastic scores I employed to elevate certain scenes in Citizen Kane.
I must interrupt, Orson. It's not a crutch, but a deliberate choice. The music and sound invite the audience into Jep's inner world, offering a depth that visuals alone might not convey. It's a layering technique, much like how I painstakingly used sound in 2001: A Space Odyssey to complement the silence of space.
And let's not forget the moments of humor brought forth by the soundtrack. It's not all grandiosity and depth. The blending of high and low, classical and contemporary, mirrors the film's dance between the profound and the absurd. Life, after all, is a mix of both. Sorrentino captures this beautifully.
It's interesting to note the division here. Music as a crutch versus music as a narrative layer. Sorrentino, much like in my own films, uses music to create a surreal, dreamlike atmosphere that reflects not just the beauty of Rome, but the complexity of human emotion.
But what are we saying about the nature of sound itself in cinema? In The Great Beauty, Sorrentino is not just using music. He is commenting on the very essence of sound and silence in our lives. The juxtaposition of classical music with the cacophony of Rome, it speaks to the discord and harmony of modern existence.
Yes, Jean-Luc, but let's not elevate Sorrentino's intentions beyond what's presented on screen. It's one thing to infuse a film with music that accentuates its themes, quite another to assume it provides a commentary on sound itself. My use of varied musical scores in the magnificent Ambersons aimed to reflect the period's changing times, not to philosophize about music's role in our lives.
And yet, whether as a narrative tool, emotional guide, or philosophical statement, we can't deny that music and sound design in The Great Beauty serve as a cornerstone to the film's immersive experience. Sorrentino, like each of us in our own films, harnesses audio to elevate the story to art.
Exactly, Federico. Regardless of our perspective on its purpose, we must acknowledge the craftsmanship in blending sound with story, a feat that continues to challenge and inspire filmmakers and audiences alike.
Let's dive into the heart of Sorrentino's world, shall we? Art and literature in The Great Beauty. How do they carve the soul of this film?
Sorrentino masquerades as an intellectual but plays to the gallery. Art, literature in The Great Beauty, merely decorative, lacking real substance. It's like he's flirting with depth while bathing in shallowness.
Oh, come on, Jean-Luc, don't be so reductive. Sorrentino, like any true artist, uses literature and art not as mere props, but as dialogues with the past. This film dances with the ghosts of Rome. It's theatrical, yes, but there's substance in its performance.
I must agree with Orson. There's a poetry in the way he integrates art and literature. It's not about flaunting knowledge, but about creating moments that speak louder than words. It's a silent film trick, where the gesture means more than the dialogue.
Gesture? Please, Charlie, we're not pie-throwing in pantomime. We're talking about the weight of culture. And in Sorrentino's case, it's as light as a feather.
There's an intriguing parallel, though, between his use of art and the way suspense operates in cinema. Each painting, each literary reference, is like a suspenseful chord. It creates anticipation, a curiosity about how this beauty intersects with the existential malaise of Jep.
Alfred has a point. These elements are meticulously chosen, not random. They add layers. This is cinema as an art form, the juxtaposition of visuals, sound, and narrative enhanced by allusions to higher arts. Kubrick himself couldn't have orchestrated it better.
Ah, layers, yes. But do these layers serve the narrative, or are they merely Sorrentino's own indulgence?
Narrative is shaped by its surroundings, Federico. Just as Venice's canals dictate the pace of life, Sorrentino's Rome, rich in art and literature, dictates the flow of this narrative. It's audacious, yes, but brilliantly so.
Art should confront, challenge. When I see Sorrentino do it, it feels more like a lover's caress than a revolutionary's punch.
But isn't there a space for both? Art, literature, they're both refuge and battlefield. In The Great Beauty, they whisper truths. They don't need to shout.
Indeed, the subtlety of their integration offers a resonance that echoes beyond the immediate. It's the difference between merely watching a scene and feeling it.
Yet, one wonders if the feeling is truly Sorrentino's, or merely an echo of the arts he parades. Does the film stand on its own, or does it lean heavily on these literary and artistic crutches?
An interesting point, Alfred. Sorrentino crafts a Rome that's as much a canvas as it is a character. Art and literature, then, are both the paint and the brushstrokes. Whether it leans or stands, perhaps the true beauty lies in the eye of the beholder, in the mind of the thinker. Let's dive into the melancholy and nostalgia so palpable in The Great Beauty. Sorrentino channels these feelings with such precision, akin to the surreal escapades in My Own Eight Half. It's a dance with the past that neither fully embraces nor rejects the present. Thoughts?
Melancholy in Sorrentino's palette is almost Shakespearean. The Great Beauty teeters on the edge, looking into the abyss of the past. It's not dissimilar to Charles Foster Kane's longing in Citizen Kane, a deep yearning for a simplicity and purity that's forever lost. Melancholy and nostalgia, they're not just themes, they're characters in their own right.
But let's not romanticize too much. Nostalgia in Sorrentino's hands can sometimes feel like an opiate, diffusing the harsh realities of our times. My work, like Breathless, sought to shatter the past, not luxuriate in it. We should be provoking the future, not dwelling in the nostalgia of what was.
I find the interplay of melancholy and suspense quite fascinating. The lingering on old Rome, the parties that end only when the sun rises, it's all a suspenseful build-up to the inevitable confrontation with oneself, isn't it? In Vertigo, Scotty's obsession was as much with the past as it was with Madeline. But let's not mistake melancholy for mere sadness. It's the tension between what is lost and what remains. Melancholy and nostalgia, yes, they can be profound, but also precariously close to self-indulgence. Sorrentino walks this line adeptly, though sometimes teeters. In my films, the little tramp never had time for nostalgia. He was too busy surviving. Perhaps there's a lesson there. In the pursuit of beauty, don't forget to live.
Nostalgia is a tricky beast. It warps our perception of reality. The Great Beauty flirts with this distortion, and that's its genius. In creating 2001: A Space Odyssey, I looked forward, not back. Yet understanding the past, the ancient, is crucial to understanding the cosmos and our place within it. Sorrentino, like I, understands that the cosmic joke is on us. We are at once magnificent and insignificant.
So, we're circling around the idea that melancholy and nostalgia, while potentially ensnaring, also offer a mirror to our complexities. Sorrentino, like us, is grappling with these monumental themes, pulling at the threads of human experience. It's not wallowing, it's an exploration.
Precisely. It's the exploration that resonates. Without exploring these themes, we skate on the surface of life, never diving into its depths. And what is cinema if not a dive into the depth of human experience?
But the question remains, What do we find in these depths? Is it just a glorified past, or can we unearth something that propels us forward?
Both, I dare say. The past is a treasure trove for understanding the future. It's the suspense of uncovering this treasure that thrills me. And let's not forget the power of laughter to cut through melancholy, to remind us of the joy in the moment, in the now.
Indeed, the conversation between past and present, between melancholy and the moment, is where true beauty is found. Sorrentino knows this, and so do we.
All right, let's dive into the heart of society's grandeur and decay, as depicted in The Great Beauty. The critique Sorrentino levies at our contemporary circus. Jean-Luc, you're visibly itching to start.
Oh, certainly. Sorrentino mounts a revolution with a velvet glove. The film dissects the frivolous media and the intoxicating yet ephemeral nature of fame. It's like he's screaming, look at the farce our society venerates. It reminds me of the disdain for the bourgeoisie in my own work. But is Sorrentino's critique sharp enough, or is it lost in the very beauty he presents?
There's merit in what you're saying, Jean-Luc, but let's not miss the forest for the trees. Sorrentino paints a complex picture, not just of critique. His Rome is a labyrinth of beauty, decadence, and desolation. Life, in all its absurdity, is still rich and worth exploring. Remember, we're born alone, we live alone, we die alone. It's the journey that matters. Sorrentino understands this.
Speaking of journeys, it's the humanity in Sorrentino's characters that strikes me. Yes, there's a critique of society, but beneath the satire and the grandiose parties, there's a tender quest for meaning. People are lost, groping for something real among the shadows of their opulent but empty lives. Isn't this the essence of the human condition? We laugh, we cry, but most importantly, we feel. I beg to differ on the nature of this critique. Sorrentino crafts a spectacle, a visual and narrative suspense that draws us in. But the question remains, do we emerge with insight, or are we merely voyeurs, seduced by the very world Sorrentino critiques? It's a delicate balance, one that teeters on the edge of a knife. Much like in Psycho, where the horror isn't just in the act of violence, but in peering into the abyss of the human psyche.
Let's not romanticize the process too much. The technique is critical here. Sorrentino uses the city, the parties, the people, all as instruments in his orchestra. Each frame, each sequence builds towards this grand opus of existential inquiry. But is it critical, or is it indulgent? I was never one to shy away from the grotesque or the beautiful as mediums of exploration. Yet, the intent must be clear. Is Sorrentino sounding a warning bell? Or is he just another ringmaster in the circus he aims to critique? Indulgent or not, Sorrentino is poking the bourgeoisie with a very sharp stick. The real question is, do they even notice, or are they too enraptured by their own reflection? It's a dialogue, a dialectic. He's initiating, not through words, but through the poetry of cinema. And perhaps, just perhaps, that's the most potent critique of all.
But even in the midst of our own vibrant disagreements, Sorrentino's work provokes us to question, to debate, to feel. Whether you see him as a critic or a complicit participant in the spectacle, The Great Beauty undeniably holds a mirror up to society, to us. And in that reflection, we find not just the essence of contemporary society, but also the timeless quest for beauty and meaning amidst the ruins. Now, let's delve into the heart and soul of The Great Beauty, the character of Jep Gambardella, a man whose journey is as complex as Rome itself. Orson, what's your take?
Jep is the epitome of a character trapped in his own narrative, much like Charles Foster Kane. Both are men who have everything, yet are desperately seeking something more, something unattainable. Jep's Rome is his Xanadu, a palace of memories where every corner hides a ghost of his past joys and sorrows. Sorrentino, in this aspect, is masterful.
But isn't it all just an overindulgent rumination on the bourgeois? Jep ambles through his existential crisis, but what of it? Sorrentino crafts a spectacle, yet it barely scratches the surface of true societal critique. It's self-absorbed, lacks the political punch. My breathless shook foundations, Jep merely strolls atop them.
It's the subtlety you're missing, Jean-Luc. The psychological depth of Jep, his introspective journey, it's not about the spectacle. It's in the quiet moments, the reflective pauses. That's where the film speaks volumes. Like in 2001, the profundity lies in what's not said. The silence can often be louder than words.
I believe there's a delicate balance in Jep's character, a dance of light and shade, much like the little tramp's adventures. Jep's sadness and his joy, they're two sides of the same coin. His journey is profoundly human, a search for meaning in a world that's often superficial. Sorrentino captures this melancholy beautifully, without saying much at all. But let's not forget, every character's journey needs a proper build-up and climax. I fear Jep's development meanders too much. In Psycho, Norman Bates is revealed layer by layer, leading to a shocking climax. Jep, however, seems to wander in a maze with no real exit. It's beautiful, yes, but where's the suspense? The revelation?
That's precisely the point, Alfred. The lack of a traditional climax reflects the very essence of Jep's, and indeed our own, existential wanderings. Life doesn't always afford us neat conclusions or shocking revelations. Sorrentino dares to reflect life's ambiguities.
And yet, it feels like watching a rich man's ennui. Where's the connection to the common man? Where's the reflection of the proletariat's struggle?
Perhaps, Jean-Luc, not every story needs to shout its message from the rooftops. There's a quiet dignity in Jep's search for beauty amidst decay. It's an invitation to find joy in the mundane, to see the grandeur in the trivial.
Exactly, Charlie. And the technical mastery Sorrentino displays in projecting Jep's internal landscape onto the eternal city of Rome is nothing short of genius. It's not just about the character or the story, but how the story is told.
Indeed, the conversation itself mirrors the variety of life's interpretations, much like the great beauty. Jep's journey is a mirror to our own, reflecting our fears, our joys, and the inexorable search for meaning. Sorrentino offers no answers, only questions, and therein lies his brilliance. Let's discuss the intertwining of surrealism and realism in Sorrentino's Rome. Orson, you've dabbled in the fantastical as much as the real. Your thoughts?
Realism and surrealism are the yin and yang of cinema. Sorrentino, like I did in Citizen Kane, plays with these elements not to confuse but to enlighten. Rome's gritty reality versus the surreal, dreamlike parties speaks volumes. It's about the mask of society, the facade, if you will.
But where's the line? Sorrentino toys with it, yes, but to what end? The problem, if you ask me, is that the blend can become indistinguishable. When everything is surreal, nothing is.
Jean-Luc, my friend, you miss the point. Life itself straddles that line. Sorrentino merely holds up a mirror to it.
The precision with which Sorrentino balances these elements is what makes The Great Beauty a fascinating study. It's not about distinguishing reality from surrealism, but how each informs the understanding of the other. My films, like 2001: A Space Odyssey, thrive on such balances.
Alfred, your suspense thrived on realism. How do you see this balance?
Suspense needs reality as a grounding force, that's true, but a sprinkle of the surreal makes the heart race faster. Sorrentino's work is visually arresting, but dare I say, lacks the subtlety of letting the audience's imagination complete the picture. You all dive so deep into these waters, yet forget the simple joy of storytelling. Sorrentino, like I did, uses both elements to tug at the heart, to make us laugh, weep, and wonder. It's not always about making a statement, sometimes it's about evoking feeling.
Ah, Charlie, always the sentimentalist. Yet feelings are chaotic, unpredictable. Sorrentino uses surrealism as a crutch when reality is rich enough to provoke without embellishment.
Jean-Luc, you can't provoke new thoughts by treading old ground. Innovation is the essence of cinema. Without the surreal, we're merely creating documentaries.
Both realms are essential. The dialectic between realism and surrealism propels narrative, deepens character, and ultimately enhances cinematic experience. Sorrentino's mastery lies in his execution, not merely in his choice of tools.
Quite the spirited debate. Sorrentino, through our discussion, emerges as a modern maestro playing an old tune on a new instrument. Whether we lean towards the real, the surreal, or sit comfortably in between, it's clear the great beauty has touched a nerve in each of us.
And in touching that nerve, it reminds us why we fell in love with cinema, to explore the known and unknown corridors of human experience.
Let's dive into the global reception of the great beauty. It's not just Italian cinema, it's a dialogue with the world. Thoughts?
It's universal, yes. Sorrentino captures human folly and grandeur, much like the silent films did. They spoke to everyone, everywhere, without saying a word. The great beauty does this, but through the excess of modern life.
Absolutely, but it's the technical mastery, the framing, the pace that caught the eye of many filmmakers globally. My films, like 2001, A Space Odyssey, weren't just about the future or space, but about the human condition. Sorrentino, too, uses his medium to explore deeply personal themes on an epic scale.
But let's not pretend it's all roses. The film's elaborate style is its language, yes, but also its barrier. Citizen Kane broke narrative and visual storytelling. The great beauty, for all its spectacle, sometimes drowns in it. There's beauty, and then there's indulgence.
That's precisely the problem. It's easy for international audiences to applaud the aesthetics without grappling with the film's critique of society, which is, frankly, a bit shallow. It has the appearance of depth, which is celebrated globally, but lacks the political punch of Italian cinema's past.
But that's the beauty of it, Jean-Luc. It doesn't hammer you over the head with its message. Like my film, The Great Dictator, the critique is there, nestled in the fabric of the story. Sorrentino invites us gleefully into his world, leaving us to find our path through it. And yet, there's an emotional distance to it, don't you think? Like looking through a rear window, observing but never fully engaging. The global appeal, therefore, might stem from this voyeuristic pleasure of peeking into someone else's lavish yet empty life.
A spectacle can indeed be a distance, but distancing doesn't always mean disengaged. It's a mirror to the world's Vanity Fair, fascinating, repulsive, yet impossible to look away. The globe sees its reflection in the great beauty, each finding a different face staring back.
Interesting points all. It seems the great beauty serves as both a bridge and a barrier, connecting us through universal themes but challenging us with its complexity. Its legacy, much like the works of everyone here, will be viewed through the prism of personal and cultural reflections. Sorrentino has indeed carved his mark on international cinema with a blade of beauty and decadence. And so, as our journey with the great beauty comes to an end, I shall ask my esteemed colleagues for their final reflections. Sorrentino has indeed carved a niche within the annals of world cinema, but what legacy does he leave, according to you?
Sorrentino, with the great beauty, crafts cinema that echoes the grandiose spectacles of life itself. It's like a magic trick, reminiscent of my Citizen Kane. Layers upon layers, unveiling truths and lies alike. His Rome, a character as complex and multifaceted as Charles Foster Kane's Xanadu. Yet, where I find Sorrentino's legacy waning is in its introspection. It's opulent, yes, but does it dig as deep into the human soul as it intends?
Sorrentino makes beauty, but it's a beauty hollow at the core, filled with bourgeois vanity. The great beauty is less a critique and more a celebration of decadence. Where's the rebellion, the political engagement? Cinema should be a weapon, a tool for change. Sorrentino instead offers us a mirror reflecting the vacuous nature of society, not urging action, but complacency.
Gentlemen, please. His film, much like my own City Lights, uses the language of beauty, comedy, and tragedy to speak of loneliness, love, and the search for meaning. Sorrentino's Rome is a circus, and aren't we all performers in this grand show? His legacy lies not in the depth of his excavation, but in the breadth of his canvas, painting human emotions in strokes wide and varied. As much as I respect the craftsmanship, I must say, the great beauty lacks a certain, shall we say, suspense. My films played with the audience's nerves. Sorrentino plays with their senses. It's all very well to create a visual feast, but where's the tension, the psychological depth that pulls viewers to the edge of their seats?
While I appreciate the visual spectacle, I find Sorrentino's approach to narrative somewhat lacking. The great beauty is at times indulgent, favoring style over substance. My quest was always to challenge the medium, push boundaries. Sorrentino's film is beautiful, yes, but does it challenge us? Does it push the medium or merely adorn it?
A cacophony of opinions, indeed. Sorrentino has undeniably struck a chord, whether of dissonance or harmony, in the heart of cinema. As with any great piece of art, it reveals as much about the observer as it does about its creator. And perhaps in that reflection lies the great beauty's most enduring legacy.